how did you get to where you are?
So it's kind of a funny story. I had begged my parents to let me buy a dog when I was about 11 years old. And so they're like, if you save up your money. And I had written out this list of 10 reasons why I should have a dog and like 10 promises I'll make when I get a dog when I was 11 years old. And so I saved up all my money and we ended up buying a border collie out of the newspaper, which is like the worst way to do it. But my goal was I had seen the Incredible Dog Challenge on TV. So the agility challenge and the frisbee dogs and everything else. And like, that's what I wanted to do with my life. And I'm like, the border collie is the way to do it. And so I got Buddy the border collie and I trained him in agility in our backyard. My dad got me one of those big construction drainage things that for the tunnel, we made weave poles out of PVC and we made jumps. And then I started trialing with him.
So wait, how old were you when you started doing that?
I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah, like in my backyard, like with the leash, pulling them through the weave poles, like old fashioned style, the way we did agility like 20 years ago. So yeah, that's how I got started in dog sports. I learned about clicker training at that point. I wouldn't say I was a positive trainer at all. I was definitely a balanced trainer, used a lot of punishment and everything else. And I have no idea how my dog learned anything, to be honest, because it was just crazy. I fell out of it just like any teenager would. And then when I had met my husband at the time, we actually ended up getting 2 Great Danes. And that's when I went back into agility training and we got really involved in rescue. And then from there, I got hired at an agility facility up in Minnesota called On the Run in Ham Lake, Minnesota. And she's like, if you really want to be a serious trainer, you have to get an agility championship on one of your dogs. I'm like, okay, well, the Great Danes aren't doing that. Nope. So I ended up adopting a border collie mix named Zuma. And Zuma is the one that got me into Frisbee. She kind of introduced me to that whole community up in Minnesota. The Frisbee community up there is like none other. They're fantastic. And then I ended up importing an Australian Coolie from Australia. And she really was a natural Frisbee dog. She still is. I mean, she's laying at my side. I'm talking about her like she's dead. But she's like right there. And between her and Zuma, I ended up auditioning for the Purina job. And that's kind of really what solidified it there. I got hired based on their performances because they're amazing dogs. And so from there, with the job I have, you have to have a lot of dogs because they are working every day and they really have to enjoy what they're doing. And to prevent burnout or injuries, you kind of go up really quickly in the numbers of dogs. I have 13, but my coworker, Tracy Custer, has 20, I believe, right now.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
She would be the winner if we had her on. And so it's interesting because when we interview somebody who gets to some kind of level like you're at, the origination story is almost always like you listen to it and you go, all right, she was just meant to do this. There was no other choice. It was just like, okay, 11-year-old Sarah's in the backyard, Scott's helping her out, and this is the path that's going to happen. It's a weird thing because we don't run into a lot of I guess like adult onset dog trainers. Like it's there early and there's just a special connection to it. And it's clear, following along with the stuff you're doing that you really, really are into dogs. You might be more into dogs than anybody I've ever interviewed before. It's incredible. But so I want to break down, the collie that you said, okay, I'm going for the agility. I want to win this. I want to get this title. I want to move to that step because it seems like a lot of people have that one dog that's like the one that's like, okay, this one showed me the potential and the possibilities, and this was a special dog. Was that the dog for you?
I think it's between her and Zynga, my Coolie. So Zuma and Zynga really were, they still are the two. Zuma's retired from Frisbee now. She ended up having shoulder surgery, so we never finished our title. Mm-hmm. Her structure just didn't really allow for it, and she ended up having bicep tendon released on both sides. But between her and Zynga, they definitely were the two dogs. Zynga's my heart dog. She's my soul. She's my everything. And so I can't imagine getting this far without those two dogs. Mm-hmm. And they're both very similar to one another, different personalities, but they're both very, very fantastic sport dogs.
So you got a collie and a Coolie, right?
Coolie, yeah.
Yeah. And so what I keep thinking about, I'm like, if you're going to do a Frisbee dog, and I've never asked anybody this because I've never interviewed anybody about Frisbee dogs, but how come it doesn't seem like anybody's using a traditional retriever for that role? Why, and so,
yeah.
Like, how are you developing the retrieving desire? I mean, because that's basically what that is out of a collie or a collie.
Border collie, yeah, exactly. So the retrievers, the problem with competitive Frisbee and retrievers, like my lab, she's 45 pounds. So she's a small lab. It's kind of painful to play with her. She's a little bit on the bigger side. So thinking about like dog catches where I have to catch her out of the air, where she's got to jump off my back and all those sort of tricks. She's so enthusiastic that it's a little bit rough to do it with that size dog. That being said, she's an amazing Frisbee dog too. But the smaller dogs, so both Zuma and Zinga are about 25 pounds, which means it makes my job a lot easier. I can grab them flying through the air, no problem. They're super athletic dogs, but getting that retrieve can be tricky. I always say that dogs with toy drive kind of err on two sides. Either they have a natural retrieve and they want to bring the thing to you so you can throw it again. So that's a lot of prey drive, and they really, really like that chase aspect of it. And you can just train that simply by, I'm not going to throw it unless you bring closer. You can use food to do it. There's a million different ways to get that retrieve. And then there's dogs that are natural tuggers. So they love to tug. They want to rip that thing out of your hand. They're a little bit more possessive than the dogs that are really prey driven. They really want to take control of it. Maybe they want to dissect it a little bit. And those are the dogs that have a lot of fight drive. So if you think about like the prey chase cycle, the dog is hunting for the prey. They find the prey. They're chasing the prey. They got the prey. They shake the prey. And then they start dissecting the prey, right? So the dogs that are really prey driven are the ones that are really into the chase part of that cycle. The dogs that have a lot of fight drive are the ones that are really into the I got it, I'm going to kill it cycle. And then dissection from there. And so with those, you have two kind of contradicting feelings, right? So I want to either possess or I want to chase and bring it back to you. And you can actually use the one where the dog is stronger to help reinforce the weaker side. So if my dog really likes the game of tug, well, I can, put a leash on the tug so that when they win it, they're not going to go running away with it and possess it. And then when they bring it back to me, I can start that fight process again and show them that if you bring it back, we can fight and tug and have that fun. Or if my dog really likes to chase something, but they're not really into the tug part, and I want to use both of those types of rewards, if they bring it back to me, I can tug a little bit and then reward that tugging, any effort they put in, by throwing it again. So you can kind of use those two things. And so with the herders, the herding breeds, they generally tend on one side or the other. And so I kind of lucked out with Zinga and Zuma, and that's pretty rare to have two dogs that are just like right down the middle. They value tug and chase equally. And so for me, it was super easy at that point.
So basically what you're saying is with most of those dogs that you might be doing the Frisbee work with, you're kind of evaluating them and you're going, all right, chaser, tugger, which one do we got? And then wherever the strength is, that's that dog's natural inclination. So you're like, okay, that's the reward to get to do, if this dog's a tugger, the reward is to do that. And so you're giving them the option like, hey, if you show me this behavior that I'm asking, I'll give you this reward, which is the behavior you want. And it goes both ways with however that dog leans. And that is so fascinating because you're actually working with the dog's natural inclinations and personality, and they vary. And so that point is, anybody listening who has I don't care, Springer Spaniel, Lab, whatever kind of hunting dog you have, whatever kind of dog you have, think about that point because your dog is going to naturally want to do stuff more than other things. And you don't want to force a dog to do it if you don't have to. You want to give that dog the choice. Like, hey, I know what you like, buddy, but here's what I want. So if you do this for me, I'll do this for you. And you get that symbiotic relationship going.
Exactly. That is definitely the most important thing. And it's funny because like even within a breed, you can have dogs that vary so much. So I breed Australian Coolies. I've had 2 litters out of Bazinga. And when I'm doing toy evaluations, because I place them as sport prospects, I only place for performance sports like agility, duck diving, that sort of thing, fly ball. I'm evaluating each individual puppy. And I'm like, yep, this puppy is definitely going to bring it. They're going to bring the toy back. They like the chase aspect. This puppy really is a fighter, type of a thing. They really like the tug game. And then I prepared those puppy owners with where the puppy's strengths are and weaknesses are. So even though they're all Australian Coolies, they're all out of the same breeding. Each individual puppy is so different from one another. And it's really taking the time to get to know what your puppy likes and what your dog likes and using that to your advantage for sure.
that point comes up a lot, and we can't stress it enough. If you're in the market for a pup, like find a breeder who knows his or her dogs, and not even just like, oh, I know the parents and the parents like to do this. Those puppies, from the moment they hit the ground until 7 weeks or 8 weeks when they go out, you're spending time with those dogs, and you go, this one's got this one's got that. And I'm sure you're interviewing potential puppy buyers, and they're saying, oh, we want a dog that does this. And you go, okay, I got your pup. Or you don't want this one. Instead of just looking at it going, X breed or Y breed does this, because they're all individuals. And that point, we run into this a lot. People say, well, I want a field bred golden, or I want a golden retriever. And it's like, do you know the spectrum of goldens? Yeah. And same thing with lab. Oh, labs hunt, so I want a lab. Well, which one? There's a lot into it. So I'm glad you said that, because it makes so much sense, and it just shows that you know what's going on. You do the Frisbee thing, you do the agility thing, you do dock jumping, all kinds of stuff, but you train bite dogs. I mean, you're training dogs, canines, right? Yep.
So like I said, I train IGP and Amandio Ring, and our club here, Evolution Working Dog Club, is one of the only positive reinforcement sport dog clubs in the entire country. There's a couple, but we do both IGP and Amandio Ring.
So hold on a second. What are you saying there?
So IGP is Schutzhund. It's the new name for Schutzhund. Schutzhund is the arm sleeve running the blinds. It's what most people think of when they think of protection sports. There's tracking, obedience, and a protection phase with that. Mm-hmm. It's more based on perfectionism. So making sure the dog is biting well, their grip is strong, they're not showing conflict, they're showing a lot of aggression in the guard, and that type of stuff. And the obedience is very precision based. And then Amandio Ring is a full body suit. So the dog can bite anywhere. They're not bred, or they're not judged so much on perfectionism rather than functionality. And so it's basically a sport based on distractions. When you go to a trial, you have no idea what the field's going to look like. You know what the exercises are, but you don't know what order they're going to be in or how they're going to be presented. And so, for instance, the retrieve, it could be a broom over an obstacle. The dog's got to jump over the obstacle, pick up the broom, bring the broom back over that obstacle, and present it to you. Within 15 seconds. There's a obedience aspect, a jumps aspect, and a protection aspect. There's one of the protection or exercises is called defensive handler. And so it's 2 decoys running around basically through a scenario with you walking with your dog, and your dog can't bite the decoy, which is the guy in the suit, until he hits you. And once he hits you, then it's game on. And so it's a lot of fun, and it really, really challenges the handler as a trainer, because like I said, you have no idea. You can train for 99 different scenarios, and then you hit the field on trial day, and it's the 100th one you didn't even think of yet. And so it really proves your handling. And that's what I really love about that sport, is it's so interesting.
Okay. So there's a lot to unpack there. And that the distraction, I want to get into that. Like, I want to get into how you train to have enough control on that dog, where it's like, it sees this thing it wants more than anything in the world. And you're like, nope, not yet, buddy, until you give that command. That steadiness around that level of distraction takes some serious work, doesn't it?
It does. And it's really, really hard to do. Like I said, I'm a crossover trainer, and it's really hard to do without corrections. And that's one of my favorite things about doing positive reinforcement only. It's not sometimes the easier way, but it definitely is the more interesting way. And there are very few trainers around the world that have done the sport successfully using positive only. And so we've developed some really cool creative ways to work on those distractions, but it all starts out right away in their foundation. So right away, the food we're using to train is on the floor, and the dog has to learn that they have to go through me to get that food. So basically whatever they want, and it's a lower one. My dog doesn't want the food nearly as much as he wants to bite that decoy. That's definitely the thing he lives for. And then I build it up to, okay, now you want that toy, that ball that's on the ground? Well, cool. We have to heel away from it 10 paces before you can go get it, or something along those lines. So we build it up very, very slowly and very methodically. So I'm always putting thought into how much my dog values what I'm using as the distraction. Can I use that distraction as a reward? So meaning, can I send my dog back to get the thing, or can I reward them away from that distraction as well? We also use something called multiple marker systems, and that's basically taking a word and telling my dog that if they do the right behavior, they hear that word, and that word means a specific reward and delivery of that reward. And so what ends up happening, and the way I use this for distraction training, is if my dog can't understand those marker words, meaning if I say chase, which is I want to throw the ball for you, and he goes and bites that decoy instead. So those are two very easy things, right? Chase the ball or bite the decoy. If he can't understand what chase means around that distraction of the decoy, then he can't know what sit, down, heel, or any of those words mean. And so I use a lot of tests around distractions to see where my dog's brain's at before I actually put him to work. And so by using those tests, I can make sure that my dog is connected, he's in a thoughtful mindset, his arousal level's low enough where he can actually process what I'm saying, and then eventually go into and reward him with that distraction itself.
So what you're doing, way before you get to the more advanced distraction training, you're working on steadiness, you're working on control, you're working on, positive reinforcement, gauging that dog. And what you're doing throughout that is making sure you're not getting false positives. You're making sure that these lessons are sticking before you move on. Is that right?
Yes. Yep. And that's where like the tests really come in, making sure that my dog really is paying attention and he's not just going through the motions, or he's not going to make errors when it comes to the actual commands and cues that I'm caring about. Right. So if my dog practices not listening to a cue, they're going to be really good at not listening to that cue. And so those tests really allow me to make sure that when I do ask for a command or a cue, my dog's going to be capable of doing it. And I think that's the biggest part where people kind of get lost in the positive reinforcement side of things. We're not just doing the same type of training and then just taking out the punishment based. There's all of these tests and patterns and everything that we do in the foundation stages that we can always fall back onto later when we increase the level of the distraction. And so it's pretty complicated the foundation part, but what ends up happening is you get this dog that is so willing to work for you no matter what's going around in the world around them and no matter how badly they want something, because it's so programmed into them that, to get that thing, to chase that squirrel, to bite that guy, I should look at my handler first and see what they want.
So interesting. So before we move on from that, how long, like when you're talking about this, because this is a pretty in-depth, pretty sophisticated, really training, I guess strategy, platform, and this is not something that's happening in a week. How long? I mean, and I know it varies. Mileage varies by dog, but just to give the listeners an idea of the commitment to this, to get this dog so willing to work for you and look you in the eyes and say, I don't care what's going around here. You let me know when we can do the fun stuff. Like what's a time frame, like a general time frame for that?
So to teach that concept, just the thing I want is on the ground, but I have to look to you first, that takes a couple of sessions. And so that's the concept that I'm using for the entire process. I run a course, a 6-week course on FenzieDogSportAcademy.com called Bomb-Proof Behaviors. And by the end of that 6 weeks, the students are definitely doing their desired behaviors around whatever level distraction they're capable of that moment. And from there, it's just a matter of time of increasing the level of that distraction and really proofing everything and putting in those reps, that work like you're talking about, and making sure that you're actually doing the training, which is the hardest part sometimes. So I would say, I don't know, Creature, my Malinois, he's a crazy guy. He was able to focus on me and do downs and healing and stuff around a decoy by the time he was 7-8 months old. And so, but that was because we had started right away. So it's really hard to say a time frame for each particular dog as far as that goes. Yeah. But you definitely start to see the progress, right away with the easy games that you can do to teach them that if you want that thing, you have to go through me to get that thing for sure.
So did you start Creature as a puppy?
I did. Yeah. So I got him when he was 10 weeks old, I believe. Yeah.
So you're picking up a 2-month-old dog, 2.5, whatever. And by 7-8 months, you're seeing real like real understanding, like, okay, this dog's he's understanding, but still that's a half a year of training.
Yes.
We got to talk about your birds because
Yes.
they're my little girl's favorite. But before that, I want you to rattle off every dog in your house, the name. Go.
Oh my God. Okay. Bazinga, Zuma, Zip Tie, Taboo, Kickstart, Nelly, Edgar, Rush, Famous, Creature, Frizzle, Brilliant, and Wild. Is that all of them? Sometimes I miss one.
We're going to make a social media. We're going to make a commercial, and I'm just going to have you saying that over and over and over again.